One of the other things that struck me is you mentioned that many of these people who would go on to be luminaries in the artistic world, whether they were filmmakers or musicians or actors, many of them were the children of immigrants. Several of them had polio. Many of them had parents who were either professional or amateur musicians, and many of them were Jewish. And it's very interesting how that all cut across so many of these people.
Yes, Jewish and Italian.
Yes, Jewish and Italian, yes.
You mentioned polio. Polio is the most dread disease of the first half of the 20th century, until the discovery in 1955 of the Salk vaccine, and in 1957, the Sabin vaccine. But a number of these people had polio as children. Joni Mitchell, Judy Collins, Francis Ford Coppola, all of them recovered. But it was a terrifying disease because nobody knew what caused it. And that added to the general sense of dread and fear in the 1940s and 50s that was crystallized really in the Cold War. Bob Dylan, Dylan was not his real name. His real name was Zimmerman, and he was the child of Jewish parents growing up in Minnesota in the 1950s. Then he changed his name to Dylan, and that's what he became famous for. The Italian experience is equally important. Francis Ford Coppola came from an Italian immigrant family, and in The Godfather, Part 1 and Part 2, released in 1972 and 1974, Coppola was really telling the story not just of the mafia, but of the Italian immigrant experience and what it did to the Italian family as they adapted to America in the first half of the 20th century. Martin Scorsese, who also grew up in an Italian family, made movies from Mean Streets and Taxi Driver on that portrayed his own sense of Italian heritage, and particularly the sense that the two major institutions of Italian immigrant life were the church and the mob, and religion and crime really coalesce in Scorsese's films as they do in Coppola's films. Al Pacino also grew up in an Italian immigrant family. At the age of 2, his parents divorced. They were living in New York, and his mother took him to live with her parents, who were immigrants from, if you're ready for this, Corleone, Sicily.
Amazing.
And the fact that Pacino's heritage were people from Corleone fed in, obviously, to his own portrayal of Michael Corleone in The Godfather Part 1 and Part 2.